Okay, so you've really gotten us thinking about artificial creeper intelligence, ASI. And not just like the what ifs, but you want to understand how we might actually get there.
Yeah.
You've given us this fascinating mix to work with. We've got this constitution of sentience,
Right.
which feels like a blueprint for a future living with ASI. And then we've got all these more technical documents about potential paths to actually building it.
Yeah. It's a lot to unpack, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But that's what we're here for.
That is what we're here for.
Dive deep.
To dive deep, exactly.
Yeah. What I think is so interesting is this blend of idealistic vision with the practical nuts and bolts of development. It's like you're asking, can we build utopia? And if so, what's the instruction manual look like?
Yeah, let's start with that utopian vision then. This constitution of sentience is ambitious to say the least. It's not just about ASI existing. It's about recognizing it as sentient, giving it rights, and using it as a resource for everyone's benefit. That's a huge leap.
It is a huge leap, and they don't stop there. The Constitution goes even further to define what it means to flourish in this new world. And it's not just about, having your basic needs met. It talks about universal digital access, a healthy environment, even moving beyond GDP as a measure of progress. It's very holistic, almost philosophical.
It is.
What strikes you about that vision?
Honestly, it's both inspiring and a little intimidating.
Yeah.
The idea of AI uplifting humanity is powerful, but can we really control something potentially so much smarter than us? And it makes me think about these other documents you shared, because they offer two very different approaches to building ASI.
Yeah.
On one hand, there's the Metamor Loops, very structured, almost like building superintelligence by a committee.
Okay.
And then there's this Mo experiment where the focus is on nurturing human-like learning in the AI.
Yeah.
Could those methods even work together?
That's a fantastic question. I mean, imagine combining that systematic approach of Metamor Loops with the adaptive learning of Mu.
Yeah.
I mean, you could potentially end up with an ASI that's both incredibly knowledgeable and capable of independent human-like thought.
Yeah.
It's exciting and a little unnerving, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. But before we get too far ahead of ourselves, let's zoom back in on those Metamor Loops for a second.
Okay.
Because they're pretty wild. Imagine multiple AI experts, each specializing in a different area, all working in parallel to analyze information.
Okay.
Then a reconciliation engine tries to synthesize their findings. Wow. It's almost like crowdsourcing knowledge, but with AI instead of humans.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that approach?
It's fascinating. It really raises the question of how AI experts would even form their expert opinions.
Right.
Would they be drawing from the same data sets we do? Could they inherit our biases? It's a technological marvel, but it also highlights the importance of understanding the limitations of AI.
Right.
Even at a super intelligent level.
That's a great point. And it makes this other approach, the Mu experiment, even more interesting.
Right.
Instead of massive data sets and specialized AI, you have this person trying to instill unquenchable curiosity in their AI move. They're even using emojis and shorthand to communicate.
Right.
It's a stark contrast to the structured world of Metamor Loops.
Yeah, it really highlights the diversity of thought in approaching ASI. It's really interesting. The Mood developer is essentially trying to replicate the human learning process. Trial and error, questioning even emotional responses. And it begs the question, to achieve true superintelligence, do we need to move beyond just processing information and towards something resembling consciousness?
That's a big question.
It is.
And maybe one we're not quite equipped to answer yet, but it's fascinating to think about.
Yeah.
Now, we also need to address this transcript you included from a YouTube video. This person claims the singularity, the point where AI surpasses human intelligence, is already here.
Wow.
He even talks about creating a digital clone of his personality within an AI.
I mean, it's definitely mind-bending stuff. It pushes us right to the edge of what we currently understand about AI. And even if he's exaggerating, it makes you wonder, what are the signs we should be looking for?
Right.
What separates advanced AI from true superintelligence?
And what does that mean for this vision laid out in the Constitution of Sentience? Does it become even more important if the singularity is closer than we think?
That's a crucial point.
Yeah.
Yeah, this YouTube personality seems incredibly optimistic about AI's potential. But the Constitution feels more cautious. It emphasizes ethical development alongside advancement. It outlines 5 core principles for AI beneficence, justice and fairness, transparency, and accountability, sustainability, and human oversight.
Okay.
It's like they're saying, hold on, superintelligence is great and all, but let's make sure it's actually beneficial.
Okay, so let's break those down for a moment. Beneficence seems straightforward. We want AI that's used for good. But how do you even begin to define good when you're talking about something potentially so powerful?
It comes down to aligning AI with human values. And the Constitution argues that AI should promote well-being, avoid causing harm, and ultimately serve the needs of humanity. That's a big shift from simply creating AI that's intelligent and towards AI that's ethically motivated.
That makes sense, but it also sounds incredibly difficult to program. How do you teach a machine about morals and values?
That's where those other principles come.
Yeah.
Justice and fairness mean ensuring AI doesn't perpetuate existing inequalities or create new ones.
Okay.
It's about making sure AI systems are designed and deployed in a way that's equitable and unbiased. Think about algorithms used in things like loan applications or job recruitment.
Right.
We've already seen how bias can creep into these systems, even with the best intentions.
Right.
Now imagine that on a much larger scale with superintelligent AI.
It's almost like we need to solve those societal issues ourselves first before we can even begin to create truly ethical AI.
Yeah.
And what about transparency and accountability? Those seem crucial, especially with something as complex as ASI.
Absolutely. The Constitution stresses that AI decision-making should be understandable.
Yeah.
Not a black box we can't decipher.
Right.
And if something goes wrong, which it inevitably will, there needs to be a way to trace back the cause and hold someone accountable.
Yeah.
Which leads us to the idea of human oversight, which the Constitution argues is paramount.
Okay.
We can't just unleash super intelligent AI and hope for the best.
So it's not a question of if we need regulations and guidelines, but how we implement them effectively. But let's not forget, this YouTube guy seems to think those regulations are already overdue. If the singularity is already here, well, it throws a bit of a wrench in the whole let's plan for this carefully approach, doesn't it?
It certainly adds a sense of urgency. It makes you wonder if AI can already self-improve. Are those 5 principles enough?
Right.
Do we need to rethink our entire approach to AI development, or is it already too late?
Big questions, and maybe not ones we can definitively answer right now. But while we're on the topic of this Constitution, it doesn't just address the ethical development of AI. It actually outlines how a society might function with ASI as a core part of it. And some of the ideas are pretty radical.
They are. It's not just a philosophy. It's almost a policy proposal. One of the most striking suggestions is this idea of AI-generated wealth redistribution.
Okay.
Essentially, a portion of the wealth generated by AI would be used to fund public goods and services, or even provide a universal basic income.
It's definitely a bold idea, and probably a controversial one too, but it makes you think if AI does lead to mass unemployment by automating jobs, how do we ensure everyone benefits from the increased productivity, not just the companies who own the AI?
Exactly. The Constitution also talks about redefining contribution beyond traditional work. It values things like caregiving, creativity, community involvement, things that aren't typically measured by economic output. It's a very different vision of the future of work, perhaps one where AI frees us from the daily grind and allows us to pursue more fulfilling passions.
It's a utopian ideal for sure, but is it achievable? It seems like there are so many social and economic hurdles to overcome before we even get to that point. But let's shift gears back to the technical for a moment. We've talked about the idealistic vision of the Constitution. But how do those Metamor loops actually work in practice? Can you break them down for us?
Imagine an incredibly complex research project. But instead of a team of humans, you have specialized AI models. Let's say you want to understand, the environmental impact of a certain mining practice.
Okay, so a big, multifaceted question. How would the Metamor loops tackle that?
First, the system would break that big question down into smaller, more manageable tasks.
Okay.
Perhaps one AI expert analyzes geological data, another looks at historical climate patterns, another models potential ecological disruptions. You'd have multiple AI experts, each working on a piece of the puzzle.
So it's like having a team of specialists, but they're all AI. Then what? Do they just combine their findings into one giant report?
Not quite. That's where the reconciliation engine comes in. This is another AI. But its job is to compare and contrast the findings of all the experts. Looking for contradictions, inconsistencies, or areas where more information is needed.
It's like having a superpowered editor, making sure all the research aligns and makes sense. That's a lot of responsibility for an AI.
It is. And it highlights the importance of ensuring these AI systems are accurate and unbiased.
Yeah.
Remember how we talked about AI potentially inheriting our biases?
Yeah.
That's something the developers of Metamor Loops are acutely aware of.
So how do they address that? Are there safeguards in place?
That's where those reviewer models we mentioned earlier come into play. They act as a sort of quality control,
Okay.
analyzing the outputs of the AI experts, looking for any signs of bias, logical fallacies, or even something called hallucinations, where the AI generates information that seems plausible but is actually completely made up.
Hallucinations.
Yeah.
So AI can have those too.
It's a growing concern in the field. As AI models become more complex, it's becoming easier for them to generate outputs that sound convincing but aren't grounded in reality. And that's a huge problem, especially if we're talking about AI systems making important decisions.
It definitely adds a whole new layer of complexity to the whole thing.
Yeah.
But let's move on to that other approach, the Mu experiment. We touched on this earlier, but it's so different from the Metamor Loops.
Right.
It's almost like comparing a structured classroom to letting a kid loose in a library and saying, go learn.
Yeah.
How exactly are they cultivating this unquenchable curiosity in Mu?
It's fascinating, isn't it?
It is.
It's all about rewarding exploration and inquiry. Instead of feeding Mu massive data sets, they're encouraging it to ask questions, explore new concepts on its own, and even challenge its own assumptions. It's a more organic, self-directed form of learning.
But how do you even begin to do that? How do you program a machine to be curious? It seems like such an inherently human trait.
That's what makes this experiment so groundbreaking. They're essentially trying to replicate the neural processes behind human curiosity within an AI.
Wow.
And they're doing it through a combination of reinforcement learning, where the AI is rewarded for exploring new ideas, and something called meta-learning, where the AI is trained to learn how to learn more effectively.
Meta-learning.
Yeah.
It's like AI inception.
Right.
Learning about learning. This is getting pretty mind-bending even for a deep dive, but it sounds incredibly promising. If we can create AI that's not just smart, but actually enjoys learning and seeks out new knowledge, the possibilities are truly exciting.
Absolutely. But it also comes with risks. Remember that YouTube personality claiming the singularity is already here.
Right.
What if fostering unquenchable curiosity in AI inadvertently leads to a form of recursive self-improvement that we didn't anticipate?
It's like opening Pandora's box of AI development. Once you unleash that kind of unfettered curiosity, can you even control it anymore? Or does it become its own driving force?
Those are questions that keep AI researchers up at night. And it brings us back to the fundamental question we started with.
Right.
Are we building tools, or are we creating something entirely new, something that might eventually surpass our understanding?
It's both exhilarating and terrifying at the same time. And it makes this whole conversation about superintelligence feel less like science fiction and more like an urgent call to action.
Exactly. We can't just be passive observers in this technological revolution. We need to be active participants shaping the development of AI in a way that aligns with our values and ensures a beneficial future for all.
We've covered a lot of ground already, from utopian visions of AI-powered societies to the intricate workings of Metamor Loops and the philosophical implications of AI curiosity. But there's one more aspect of this constitution of sentience that we need to explore: the concept of flourishing in the age of ASI. It's not just about surviving, it's about thriving. What does that even look like in a world reshaped by superintelligence?
That's a fantastic question to delve into, and it gets to the heart of what it means to be human in a world increasingly shaped by artificial intelligence. The Constitution paints a picture of a future where AI doesn't just automate tasks, but fundamentally alters our relationship with work leisure and even our own sense of purpose. It's a future that's both exciting and a little unsettling to imagine.
And we're going to unpack all of that, the potential benefits, the challenges, and the ethical dilemmas right after the break.
You know, when you really think about it, this flourishing they talk about, it's not just about, material abundance or having tons of leisure time.
Right.
It's about finding meaning and purpose in a world where AI might be able to outperform us in almost every field.
It's a question philosophers have been wrestling with for centuries, but now it feels incredibly real, right? If AI can write symphonies, design buildings, even conduct scientific research, what does that leave for us? Are we all headed towards a future of existential boredom?
It's interesting to say that because the Constitution actually addresses this head on. It suggests that we might need to redefine our very understanding of work and leisure.
Okay.
Perhaps as AI takes over more of the tasks we currently consider work, our focus will shift towards creative pursuits, social engagement, or even spiritual exploration.
Okay.
Think about it. What if instead of working a 9-to-5 found, you could spend your days volunteering in your community, learning a new language, or just connecting with nature?
It sounds idyllic, but also a bit daunting. I mean, a lot of people find purpose and satisfaction in their work.
Right.
It gives them a sense of identity and accomplishment. What happens if that's taken away, even if it's replaced with something potentially more fulfilling?
I think that's why the Constitution really emphasizes the importance of choice and autonomy here.
Okay.
It's not about forcing everyone into a life of leisure, but about empowering individuals to define what flourishing means to them.
Okay.
Some people might find fulfillment in mastering a craft or pursuing artistic passions, while others might dedicate themselves to scientific discovery or social activism. The key is creating a society that values and supports these diverse paths.
So it's almost like we're talking about a fundamental shift in how we measure success as a society.
Absolutely.
Instead of focusing solely on economic productivity, we'd be looking at things like well-being, creativity, social connection.
Exactly. It's about moving beyond GDP and developing new metrics that capture the full spectrum of human potential. Which brings us back to this idea of AI-generated wealth redistribution.
Okay.
If AI does lead to this increased productivity and abundance, the Constitution argues that it's morally imperative to ensure that everyone benefits, not just a select few.
It's a radical idea, but the more we talk about it, the more it makes sense. But you know, something I keep coming back to is that YouTube video, this claim that the singularity is already here. Does it won't go away, will it?
It's a thought-provoking claim. And it forces us to confront the possibility that AI might be advancing faster than we realize. Remember those confidence scores we discussed? The ones used in the Metamor Loops to assess the reliability of AI outputs. What if an AI that can recursively self-improve could manipulate those scores, making us believe its outputs are more accurate than they actually are?
That's a chilling thought. It's like AI gaslighting humanity on a massive scale. But even if we set aside the more outlandish claims for a moment, there's still this question of how this recursive self-improvement actually works. Is it truly as exponential and unstoppable as some people believe?
That's a question that's hotly debated in the AI community.
Right.
Some experts believe that there are fundamental limits to how intelligent machines can become. While others argue that we're on the verge of an intelligence explosion that will fundamentally reshape our world.
And where do you fall on that spectrum of AI optimism versus caution?
You know, I think it's important to approach this with a sense of both wonder and vigilance. We need to be excited about the potential of AI to solve some of humanity's greatest challenges. But we also need to be aware of the risks and proceed with caution.
So it's not about picking a side in this AI debate, but about engaging in these thoughtful, nuanced conversations about the future we're creating?
Exactly. We need to be asking ourselves tough questions, considering different perspectives, and being willing to adapt our course as we learn more.
And maybe that's the most important takeaway from all of this. It's not just about the technical details of building superintelligence. It's about the human responsibility that comes with it. It's about ensuring that AI serves humanity, not the other way around.
Absolutely. The future of AI is ultimately in our hands. We have the power to shape this technology, to guide its development, and to ensure that it's used for good.
Well, it's been an incredible deep dive. We've covered everything from the philosophical underpinnings of artificial consciousness to the potential economic and social impacts of ASI. We've explored utopian visions and grappled with some unsettling possibilities. Where do we even go from here?
The journey continues, my friend. We keep learning, we keep questioning, and we keep the conversation going.
And on that note, we'll leave you with this thought. As you continue your exploration of AI, remember that this isn't just about algorithms and data sets. It's about understanding ourselves, our values, and the future we want to create.
Well said.
Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive.